Okay, can you all see the slide now? That's
Yes.
okay. Yeah. So I first want to say I'm really honored to be here and quite humbled actually to have to follow Chief Mann and Kisa Camp-Horinek. So as Lindsey said, she's asked me to give a really general overview of rights of nature. So I wanted to start by noting that rights of nature actually refers to two different things. When in practice, when people talk about rights of nature, they're talking about two different things. The first is a global philosophy. Sorry, I gotta just get my, there we go. The first is a legal philosophy which is often referred to as earth jurisprudence or earth law. And the second is a growing number of legal provisions that codify this philosophy by recognizing ecosystems as legal subjects with rights. And there are now at least 180 such rights of nature laws in 18 countries around the world, and more are being adopted all the time. So it's really a fast growing global phenomenon. So first, let me talk a little bit about what Earth law is. So Earth law argues that ecosystems have the right to exist. Um, well, so sorry, let me back up. I'm having some technological problems seeing the PowerPoint. Are you actually seeing
Yes. What
the
is
PowerPoint?
Earth law?
Okay, sorry about that. So as you can see, so Earth law is an emerging body of law that focuses on protecting, restoring, and stabilizing the functional interdependency of Earth's life and life support systems. Um, but it differs from conventional Western law in several important ways, right? So first, Western law generally is rooted in this idea that humans are separate and apart from nature. And it views nature as individual stocks of resources, which are legally treated as property that exists for human use, specifically to spur development, which is defined as exponential growth and consumption of these, quote, resources. And so then environmental laws rooted in this legal paradigm, like the Clean Water Act and the Endangered Species Act, they actually legalize environmental harms by regulating but permitting extreme levels of pollution and other forms of ecosystem destruction. I think this was shown really well in the meeting or in the movie. By contrast, Earth law recognizes that humans are actually part of nature, and consequently, human well-being is dependent on the well-being of ecosystems that provide the conditions for life. And this is because nature is comprised of nested living ecosystems whose parts are all interconnected through reciprocal relationships. So all elements of nature, including humans, are more accurately understood as members of what ecological scientists call biotic communities rather than individual stocks of resources. And rather than exponential growth and consumption, Earth law prioritizes achieving and maintaining balance and a dynamic equilibrium within this healthy ecosystems, encapsulated by the catchphrase, living in harmony with nature. So this requires preventing extreme environmental harms that threaten ecosystems' ability to exist and thrive. So to this end, Earth law argues that ecosystems have the right to exist, thrive, and evolve, and that nature should be able to defend its rights in court, just like people can. And this is where rights of nature laws come in. So the issue is that in conventional Western legal systems, like we have in the United States, everything is legally categorized as either a legal person, which has rights, or as property, which has no rights, meaning its interests cannot be considered under the law. And conventional law regularly treats things that are not actually people as if they were people legally. And this includes corporations, municipal governments, and even ships. However, conventional law, ironically, treats all aspects of nature, including living things like animals, ecosystems, and so forth, as property. So consequently, conventional law protects nature only for the benefit of people and corporations. So profit naturally usually takes priority over nature, leading to extreme degradation. So rights of nature laws correct this flaw within the legal system by recognizing ecosystems and other elements of nature as having fundamental rights, like the right to exist, to maintain the functioning of their natural cycles, to naturally evolve, and to be restored when damaged. So again, the goal is to restore nature to health and maintain balance within the systems that produce the conditions necessary for life. And I think it's important to clarify that nature's rights are consistent with human rights because humans are part of nature, not separate from it, as we've been saying. And I'll provide an example of this in a moment. So rights of nature laws, though, also give nature a voice in human decision-making bodies, like courts, regulatory agencies, and the like, by creating guardian bodies that are tasked with representing nature and protecting its rights. So importantly, rights of nature gives ecosystems legal standing to have their rights defended in court. And to get a sense of why this is important, and also how rights of nature and human rights are often connected, imagine you live in Pennsylvania or somewhere else, and a fracking company gets a permit to inject fracking wastewater into underground wells that contaminate your only drinking water supply. Now, you might assume reasonably that surely you and your fellow citizens have the right to prevent this from happening, but you would be wrong. Existing law privileges corporate property rights, which includes their right to damage or destroy their property, and does not recognize community rights to protect their ecosystems. And moreover, unless you can show that you were personally harmed or by this activity, you have no standing to sue the company to try to stop them. And even if you or a family member did get sick, the existing law makes it extremely difficult to prove that your illness was directly caused by the company's injection of toxic chemicals into the water system. The company can argue that the illness could have been caused by something else, and this is usually sufficient to avoid liability. However, if the local community adopts an ordinance recognizing the watershed as a legal person with rights, and then authorizes community members to speak on behalf of the watershed in court, it's scientifically much easier to show the direct causal chain by which the injection of toxic chemicals damages the ecosystem's ability to function, violating its rights, making it easier to establish standing in court. And so this provides a tool, a legal tool for communities to defend not only themselves, but also the ecosystems on which they depend. And so more than 70 municipalities in the US have adopted rights of nature ordinances for this reason. But I also want to note that rights of nature laws can be used to support rights of nature more proactively by considering them upfront in decision-making processes. And this is the idea behind incorporating rights of nature into the ASHI STARS system. Now, a similar effort is underway to incorporate rights of nature, or Earth law more generally, into the Sustainable Development Goals. And this is coordinated by the UN Harmony with Nature program, which was created within the Division for Sustainable Development to provide a forum for thinking about how Earth law could be incorporated into the Sustainable Development Agenda and to advocate for this. And you can find out more information about this program at the link below at harmonywithnatureun.org. So I just want to end by talking a little bit about how rights of nature changes the way we might think about sustainable development. Right, the current sustainable development model highlights the importance of these three spheres, nature, people, and the economy. And it presents them as distinct spheres that can operate independently, represented by this Venn diagram, with sustainability marked by the tiny area in the middle where the three spheres overlap. Right? But in reality, the only circle that can operate independently is nature, as the other spheres are dependent on nature for their existence. Right, human societies can't exist without nature providing the conditions for life. And economic systems are social constructions that can't exist without functioning societies. So consequently, a more accurate portrayal of the relationship between nature, people, and the economy is one of nested systems within a natural hierarchy. Right? Economic systems are embedded within and dependent on functioning social systems. And both of these are embedded within and dependent on functioning natural ecosystems. So this suggests a natural hierarchy of rights that should guide decision-making about how to implement the Sustainable Development Goals. And I want to emphasize these rights should not be seen as equal competing rights, but rather rights that operate in synergy with one another. Treating them as competing rights undermines the well-being and the integrity of the whole system, which is arguably the source of our current crises. So just to conclude, I want to show you a graph that was created, or a diagram created by Mumta Ito of the organization Nature's Rights. She sorted the existing sustainable development goals into their respective spheres, and then creates a framework for how we should prioritize the various sustainable development goals, given the reality of planetary boundaries and the reality that economic well-being is dependent on social well-being, which in turn is dependent on the health and well-being of natural ecosystems. So I'm quite sure I'm probably out of my time at this point, so I'll stop there, and happy to talk about any of this in the Q&A period.